No problem.
Late, but I think we have everybody ready to go.
Perfect. All right, I'm live on my side. I get to teach the fun stuff. About boring politics and government stuff.
I'm going to turn the sound on my end, and
All right.
then you can just go ahead and you're ready.
All right, fantastic. Let me know when you're ready. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Louis Gibb. I'm here with the You Can Be program, teaching you about website design and SEO practices. Basically, what we're going to be covering today is very, very simple. I'm going to teach you about the principles of successful website design, messaging, look and feel, anything and everything that has to do with presenting a professional, clean, uncluttered web presence that anyone can go ahead and use to create a website, an application, deliver a message. And what we're going to be doing here is showing you basically a couple of ideas and examples of how this all works. In the end, I hope that everyone will be able to take away something very simple. That's how to create an effective web design that incorporates basic principles, clear communication, using existing technologies and things that you can utilize to really make and design any website you're looking to create. Throughout this process, I'm going to be going over different main elements that are going to basically teach you the design principles and things to keep in mind as you create a successful website. One of the biggest obstacles I've seen when people create a website is they believe it's a once you build it, they will come type of mentality. And honestly, that's not the case anymore. Just because you have a website does not mean that you're going to get an audience to just come and visit it. So part of effective web design is not just the way it looks, not just the messaging that you're putting out there, but more importantly now search engine optimization. Taking a look at different things like analytics, taking a look at what's working, what's not working, and adjusting your plan for your actual website as you start to gain understanding based off of what you're learning from your audience. So it's really important for everyone to keep in mind what actually your audience wants, how they want it, and the best way to communicate that back to them. So I'm going to start off really simply here, and that's going to be going over the 10 main elements of web design that can really make a successful impact for you. The first one is the overall look of a website. The overall look of a website, of course, is the look and feel, but it goes beyond just the look and feel. What we're really talking about here is your home page is the landing page for your for your business, whether you're building something that's going to be informational, whether you're building something that's going to be entertainment-based, or a corporate type of website that is addressing a business-to-business environment. You need to make sure that everything is very clean, uncluttered, easy to read, and more importantly, is very professional. Now, aesthetics play a big factor in this, and that, of course, comes down to attractiveness, and that's, somewhat able to be determined by the eye of the beholder. But there are some basic principles to this that you have to keep in mind. So what we wind up talking about here is clean. What does clean mean? Clean actually means something that is easy for the person to be able to get the message from you about what you're selling. Quite frankly, if you're selling widgets to someone, or let's say you open up a business to sell perfumes or whatever the case may be, you need to make sure that the message is very clear and concise, that the look and feel is something that does not detract from what it is that you're trying to sell. If it's a product, you want it to be product focused. There needs to be benefits, need to be there instantaneously for people to grab onto. Along with that, it has to be uncluttered. If it's a mess and people can't really understand what it is that they're buying from you, you wind up having a really difficult message for someone to receive. Just like when you walk into a mall and you have all of these different stores all around you and there's all this noise, it becomes a little bit cumbersome for you to know what you're looking for. That's why they have directories and tell you where to go. But for your website, you don't have that. You have a split second to grab someone's attention and to really make it impactful. So you have to make sure that everything is clean and concise, uncluttered, so that way the main message of your site is there, clearly visible for everyone, and that it's professional. If you have a certain message that you're trying to get across to your customers, your brand is going to be something that you have to keep in mind. But also you have to make sure that it is extremely professional and that no one is offended by the content that you're showing. You want to aim to underwhelm rather than overwhelm. So basically what that means is you don't want to make things too difficult for them to get a hold of, make the decision that they want to buy as quickly as possible. Along with that, you also want to make it easy for them to get from the main site, the home page, to whatever content they're looking for. So if they're looking for a product, you want them to be able to find that particular product within a click or two. You don't want them to have to click and click and click and click all the way through. So that's where this uncluttered mentality comes into play. Once you're doing all this, you wind up creating something that is easy to use. So use is very important. It's not, when you're creating a website, you're not creating a website for yourself. You're creating a website for your audience. And that's probably one of the biggest obstacles that I've seen people face in the developing world for websites is, I think I'm the target audience. Well, really, you know what? You may not be the target audience. So it takes a little bit of research, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But it's all stuff you need to keep in mind as you're going through the initial steps of creating a website. Overall look and feel. You have to think about it. How does this match with my brand? Does it look drastically different? Does that confuse people? All these different things you have to keep in mind. So you want to make sure you're not distracting. After you have thought through the entire overall look and feel of your website, you also need to think about, now, what type of messaging do I really want to portray on this? You want it to, of course, match your branding. So if you happen to be talking about selling perfumes or any type of equipment or whatever the case may be, that information that you're presenting is extremely important. So you need to determine, am I building a website that's informational based? If it is informational based, that means you're going to have a lot of text content. However, people like to skim. So even though you may have a lot of text content, what you want to do is make sure you also have something that calls out specific pieces of information that you want to make sure your audience is actually picking up on. So for example, if you are building an informational website on how to get college grants or college scholarships, for example, well, then you want to make it so that they can scan the website, the web page that they're looking at, and get the basic premise by just a glance. And then if they're interested, they'll read more. You have a much better chance of grabbing their attention and making them understand what you're actually trying to sell or what information you're trying to give them. So you have to keep that in mind when you're building a website. Overall look and feel, then your messaging. And the messaging changes depending on whether you're doing an information website, whether you're doing a website, let's say for entertainment purposes. Take a look at different websites that are out there. For example, Fox TV has a great website that shows entertainment type of shows, TV shows, movies. 20th Century Fox is another one, CBS, all these different sites where you have a lot of entertainment-related stuff, whether it's news, whether it's TV shows, whether it's movies, talk shows, whatever the case may be. All of them have a completely different look and feel and a different profile when displaying content. The same thing can be said if you're creating, let's say, an advice website where you're giving people advice on how to apply for a college grant, the best steps to take. Or you're trying to solve a particular problem. I see a lot of DIY type of websites, which is do-it-yourself type of websites that give you advice on the best ways to paint your home, the best way to fix your car. I mean, something that I do all the time is I wind up surfing YouTube trying to find a video on how to replace my oil filter or change my air filter. And what that does is it presents me the information that I'm looking for very quickly. And that's what all of your users that are going to be looking for information on your website are looking for. That quick, easy information gathering, processing, and then decision making. So you have to make sure that you follow those steps. If you're selling something, you need to make it easy for them to buy. And that messaging comes across with follow it, find it, and allow them to order quickly. Now that you have an overall look and feel established, okay, you have some messaging established. The next thing you need to worry about is how quickly can people find my website? In this world now where you have 6 seconds to make a video on Vine to grab someone's attention, it used to be 15 seconds, and then it used to be 30 seconds, and before that people were doing minute-long commercials. So the attention span of your audience is going down and down and down and down on a daily basis. I was just watching a movie the other day called Chef on Netflix, and they were talking about this one particular new program that they're putting in place, which is basically capturing 1-second videos throughout someone's entire day to capture an entire time period. That's something that I had never even seen before until I saw this movie. And really, that it really speaks to how quickly the audience's mind is being driven off to other things as they're searching on Google or Bing or any of the other search engines. They're fighting for your attention, or you're fighting for their attention, I mean, and you're constantly fighting other people who are selling something that's similar enough to where they're going to click on that. So the messaging and how quickly your site actually loads. So when you're talking about speed, we're not only talking about the speed of how quickly you can get to market, but also how quickly people can get to your site and how quickly they can access page by page. So you have to be cognizant of all those different things as we're going through the process of creating a website, which of course comes down to speed is basically bits of information, bytes of information. Each image, each line of code, each video, everything takes time to load on a page. So you have to be cognizant of what you're putting on your page. Every single image that you add is going to add time to download. Whether it's an image, whether it's text, whether it's links, whatever the case may be, every single line of code will add additional time to render that page. If you're sitting there and you click on a link and it takes 5 to 10 seconds, 9 times out of 10, you're going to hit the back button just like me. Because you know what? I did not get to what I'm looking for fast enough. So you need to make sure that when you're building these things, it's very important that you build quickly, smartly, and get rid of any of those, oh, let's have these really cool flashing buttons and let's add all these different bells and whistles that could add value, but there needs to be a definitive cost benefit to having an image or anything else on your site. You need to sit down and say, is it important for this video to be on there? Should that video load automatically? Should you include music? Should that music load? Should the audience be able to pause it, stop it, any of those different things? All of those options are available as you're actually building out your website, and you need to be thinking about that. I've seen many websites where you go onto the home page and all of a sudden music starts playing. You have no idea where the music came from, there's no controls, and there's no way for you to shut it off. It gets really annoying really fast, especially when it's really obnoxious type of music that doesn't fit your personal profile. So before you put any of those things on your website, you need to ask yourself, is it something that my audience is going to want? And you need to ask yourself constantly throughout the entire process of building a website, is that something that will help your client either buy or be interested in reading your website? Which of course leads down the path of graphics and layout. You want something that's going to look cool. I know I do. Whenever I build a website, the number one thing I'm looking for is this cool? Does this thing give my audience the desired effect, which is, you know, depending on what type of site you're building, is different. Each site is going to be completely different. But you need to just sit back and think about it and say, okay, you know, in a serious business website, you don't want all of these different like cartoony type things because you're trying to produce an image or a perception that you are a professional company. However, if you're an artist who sells caricatures and you do children's shows, absolutely have your cartoons on there because that makes sense. All those different little things you need to think about. So every single time you're going through anything else on your website, everything boils down to how it looks, the messaging behind it, how fast it loads, and understanding that sometimes it's okay to have white space. It's not a bad thing to have just empty space, because if that empty space draws attention to something that you see, that you consider important, your audience is going to get there. They're going to see it. They're going to see how important it is, and they're going to hopefully click on it and then hopefully buy whatever it is you're selling. Color is extremely important. I can tell you that if you're building a website like I do for all these different people, like I do around the world, every single client of mine has a completely different idea of what is cool. So I go through a process of establishing, it's great what you think is cool, but what does your client base think is cool? And we go through this user experience type of scenario where I build out what's called a user story. And I say, okay, your typical user is this type of person. Their typical experience is going to be a journey. They log on, they go to a search engine, they look for something specific, they then walk through this specific journey to get to your site and hopefully buy the product or service that you're selling. So you're going through this process and taking them on this journey. Every single step throughout your entire creation of your website needs to keep that journey in mind. Any decision you make, you need to say, does that positively impact the customer's journey? If it doesn't positively impact the customer's journey, It's not worth the time, energy, or effort to add that particular feature. For example, flashing red lights that say, hey, buy now. Yes, it grabs the person's attention, but it also seems extremely desperate and the user gets turned off. And that is extremely important when you're talking about getting people to believe in you and your product and buy from you. Another thing that's really simple to keep in mind is, for example, go to any car website, go to any website that has people on it. Everybody should look like they're either, whether it's a car or whether it's a person, everyone looks like they're pointing towards the center of the page. Okay, and the importance of that is that you're guiding people through the website, and pointing them to the middle of the page will point them to the content that is important, which is always going to be in the middle of the page that you're on. Roads, neckties, all of these different things need to be placed. Remember, here in the United States, everything is left to right. But if you're building a website for, for some place in Southeast Asia or Asia, it's a little bit different. It's right to left. But if your target audience is here in the States or in North America, you're building from left to right. Keep that in mind. The user flow throughout the entire time, throughout the entire process of looking through the website needs to be consistent. The next thing you have to worry about besides the graphics and layout is text readability. There are hundreds of thousands of fonts out there. Google has an entire font library that you can download and use for free. It's fantastic because those fonts are already vetted. They work on every single browser. You have to be cognizant of everything you add should be viewable on every different type of browser, and each one of them is different. Firefox is different from Chrome. Chrome is different from Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer is different from Safari. Safari is different from Opera, and every single one of those displays content a little bit different. So what may look fantastic on Firefox is going to look completely different on another browser. You need to keep those things in mind, so use standards. There's an organization called the W3C. The W3C actually posts all of this free content as far as web standards, and they make chunks of code and lines of code readily available for anyone that wants it or needs it, so that way they can make sure that they're cross-browser compliant. Extremely important that you keep that in mind, not just from a programming perspective, but also from a speed perspective and readability perspective. If you're using a font, you want to make sure that that font works across all browsers. Otherwise, you're going to have a completely broken site where sometimes what fits on one line may take 2 or 3 lines to fit perfectly on that particular browser. So keep that in mind. Go through and visit sites before you even decide that you're going to build a site. Go through and take a look at what's appealing to you. Make a plan. That's one of the biggest things that I see people not do, is they don't make a plan. It's extremely important that you define who your audience is, define what they're looking for, how your particular product or service answers that, and makes it important. It makes it so that way they have to buy your particular product, whether it's price point, whether you solve the particular pain point that no one else has been able to solve, and then get that message across clearly. That message coming across clearly can mean any number of things, whether it's text, whether it's fonts, whether it's the messaging, the layout, all those different things all play a factor in this. The other thing is, remember, a high percentage of the male audience is also colorblind, which means that sometimes a color that looks one way to you will look completely different to somebody else. So you have to keep that in mind when you're building this, and make sure you ask many people what they think. You can start off by asking friends and family, and then asking people who are part of the target audience. The other factor is there are going to be people who have special needs as far as reading difficulties. So they have what are called screen readers that will literally read the information that's on the screen. Why is that important? Well, when you're building a website, everything is basically built out with lines of code. That code determines how an image is displayed, determines what text is going to be displayed, and how it's going to be displayed, right? So the size, the color, and all these different things like underlines or bold or italics. Well, those bolds, italics, and underlines are also inflections in the way that these readers pick up the information and then repeat it back to the user. So someone who's visually impaired will hear it. And if your message is supposed to be with an exclamation mark or with boldness to emphasis, it'll read it that way. So you have to keep all those different things in mind. Now, it doesn't just read text. It'll also read the images. You're asking yourself, well, how does a screen reader read an image? Well, there's actually a thing called alt text. This alt text is what you label that image as. And when you label the alt text, that is what the reader is actually going to pick up. So many different things here that you have to keep in mind as you're building your website. Every single time that you add something to it, remember, you add an image, add alt text. If you're adding video or components that require plugins, keep in mind that those things are not going to work with those screen readers. So you have to keep that in mind. And what does that mean? That means that if you have an audience that is of a certain percentage of people with some kind of disability, then you need to make sure that you are servicing that particular client base extremely well. So not just plain fonts, not just making sure that the text is easy to read, but also the images and everything that's embedded also has alternative text as well. I talked earlier about page skimmability, or being able to just look at a page and scan and understand. If you pick up nothing else from this class, scan and understand. If you can scan a website and understand it within a couple seconds, that person has successfully created a website that delivers a message. That message should get you to either act or have a call to action. That call to action is to call them for more information, links to products that they're buying, whatever the case may be. So page skimmability is extremely important. All of this I'm going to tie up in a minute into something else, which is called search engine optimization. That's a little bit of a bigger subject, but we're going to cover it somewhat here. Now, you've gone through and you've thought through this entire process. You've asked your target audience what it is that they're looking for. Now you have to start thinking about, okay, well, I have more than just a couple pages on my site. So what is it that you need to provide to be able to get users to that particular information? Well, to me, that means navigation. That navigation could be text links. It could be a main navigation with secondary navigation under it. In other words, a submenu. And that submenu could have tertiary navigation or a submenu underneath one of those items. So you do want to make it very easy for someone to get to the information within as little clicks as possible, number one. However, you also have to keep in mind that your window for your website is only so big, and that you only have so much room. So if your main link first link is taking up this much room, and then your secondary link is taking up this much room, and your third row of navigation is taking up this much room, there's a very strong possibility that the user is not going to be able to get to all of that content. And if they can't get to all that content in one click, you failed. So you want to make that navigation extremely intuitive and not overwhelming. So on a long page, it's extremely important that you keep all of that in mind and don't throw too many layers of navigation in there. Something else that's really important here for everyone to keep in mind is, especially if you're collecting data, especially if you're displaying testimonials or feedback from your clients or whatever the case may be, you need to have a privacy statement. It's something that basically tells everyone, hey, when you access my website, we're going to be collecting information, if you're collecting information. That's orders or people sending in information requests or anything along those lines. And this is what we are going to do with it. You want to be upfront. You want to be honest about everything that you do. With that also is testimonials. Testimonials are extremely important to a lot of businesses. If you're selling a product, the easiest way to get other people to buy is to make it known that the product that they're considering buying was purchased by somebody else and that other person loved it. Every single time you put a testimonial on a website, the chances of someone else buying it increases tenfold. So think about that. Use honest feedback. Be extremely open and upfront about your privacy statements so that way everyone understands what it is that they're going after. The other thing is, people want to be in contact with the company. If you don't have a contact form on your site, at least have a phone number or an email address that they can reach out to. When they reach out to you, respond as quickly as possible. That can be something as simple as an auto reply. For example, almost every single email program and email system out there, whether it's Gmail or Yahoo or GoDaddy has their own email service as well, allow you to set up an automatic reply. And that automatic reply, you can set up rules around. Those rules can be, if someone replies with this type of content within their particular email message, reply with this type of automatic response. It gives them the perception, which is extremely important, the perception that their message is being looked at immediately and that you're going to take action. And then, of course, the most important thing, take action. I can't tell you how many people just do not take action, and you have to. One of the most important things also, again, there's 10 of them, we're on number 9, words. It's extremely important. That's perfect, Brian, thank you. Words are extremely important. So you don't want to make a really lengthy article. For example, I could probably sit here and talk about web design all day long, but I only have a total of an hour, so I'm going to keep it short. But in the end, every single word matters. And punctuation and emphasis all matter, because that is what people are going to pick up on. They're going to stop when you put a period. They're going to get excited when you put an exclamation mark. They're going to ask themselves a question when they see a question mark. Things are bold. They're bold for a reason. Chances are they're going to be like, oh, that's an important word. I have to, I really got to make sure that I pay attention to this and read it. So make sure that everything is spelled properly. Go through and take some creative writing classes. Go through and understand how to write. Now, writing for a book and a magazine is completely different than writing for a website. I understand that. But it's something that you also need to sit down and understand the basics of writing. If you can't write, hire someone to write for you. One of the biggest things I can tell you is you can walk into this beautiful website, you log on, and you're like, oh my God, this website's beautiful, it's amazing, I love it. And then you start reading and you see typo after typo after typo, and you're like, oh my God, what the heck? And you just leave. You've lost all confidence in that company. And that is the surest way to be unsuccessful. So if you don't know how to write, that's fine. Hire yourself a writer. If you do think that you're a great writer, get someone to look at it and edit the content. I consider myself to be a writer. I think I'm a pretty good writer. Unfortunately, I make a lot of mistakes. So I use spell check and I get other people to read my stuff because I know no matter how perfect I think I am, I make a lot of mistakes. And it's simple stuff. Sometimes it's the word there spelled different. And you don't even pick up on it because you're going through and you're typing really fast and like, oh, I'm on a roll. I got this whole thing going on. Be cognizant of that. And again, if you don't know how to write, hire a professional writer. It's extremely important. This is something you do not want to skimp out on. And now the most important part of today's assignment or class, search engine optimization, the dreaded three-letter word, SEO. So what is search engine optimization? Well, you built a site. And like I said at the beginning of this, everyone builds a site and decides, I built it. Everyone's going to get here. Well, no, it's not the way it works. The only way that people will find your site is by going to a website like Google, like Bing, and doing a search. Pretty simple. However, if your website is not search engine optimized, what that means is that the search engines themselves cannot pull the content of what is on your site. Now, these robots and these spiders, because that's what they are. They're called robots and spiders. They go out there and they crawl through the interwebs, and they go out there and they say, "Hi, look at this. This site is a brand new site. There's some content here. Let's start reading it." All right, and they start to go through, and their job is to pick up on what's called meta tags. These meta tags are things like a description, like a title, like keywords. So, for example, keywords. That's very simple. You're looking for a bike, and you're looking for a bike in your hometown that you can buy, and you're looking for a particular type of bike. Let's just say a Schwinn. You're going to type in, for me, a 26-inch men's Schwinn, and you're going to put in your particular city, and you're going to hit go, and it's going to pull up every single reference of any site that's on there. So that means you're going to be competing at that time with everybody else that has that same content. And what winds up happening here is you're competing for those particular keywords. So those particular keywords are, like again, Schwinn 26-inch men's bike. So you want to make sure that if your page is selling that type of item, go ahead and do that. List it. You want to make sure it's in the description. You want to make sure that it's repeated in the content. You want to make sure that it's in the meta tags. And you also want to make sure, if you happen to have a picture of that 26-inch men's Schwinn, that there's an alternate text on there that says 26-inch men's Schwinn. And what winds up happening is then each of those spiders and crawlers and robots that go out there wind up saying, oh, look at this, all this really good content. And it's repeating itself, on the same page. It's relevant, it's relevant, it's relevant. And you wind up creating this feast for all these robots and spiders. And that brings your search engine results higher and higher and higher. Now, keep in mind this other facet here, okay? This other thing that's extremely important is how do you get this stuff to the search engines? Because, like I said, you just don't build it and they come, because the spiders are not going to come. You have to actually submit your website and all of the pages to all of these different search engines. Now, Google makes a really cool tool. It's called the Google Webmaster Toolkit. In that toolkit, you just sign up for Google, and you register your site, you put a line of code in there, and you're able to upload and publish your site to Google. And you do that every time you put in new content. And you should be putting in new content all the time. And then automatically, as you start doing this, Google will be like, hey, these people are updating their site constantly. That's fantastic. Yay. Let's go ahead and grab some more content. So refresh your content all the time. Anything that's relevant to that, social media posts, whatever the case may be. You wind up being able to draw people in through all of these different relevant links. Relevant links are tied to search engine optimization, along with in-page search engine optimization. So, for example, if you're building out a website and you have all of your meta tags and everything else, let's say it's a 26-inch men's Schwinn bike. Well, then on that page, you should have the word or the words 26-inch men's Schwinn bike repeated and repeated and repeated. And what that's going to do is it makes the content relevant, which means that this is something that they want. So from that perspective, it's really simple, but it does require just a little bit of foresight and thinking before you do it. Building a page just to build a page without a plan is a bad idea. Plan it out. There's all kinds of free resources out there for you to be able to learn how to build a website. For example, you could use WordPress. WordPress is WordPress.org or .com is a free blogging type of software. Bloggers out there, you can use Wix, you can use Squarespace, all of these different free sites that you can use to build your website. And then you can buy in so you can own the domain. So let's say it's 26inchmen'sschwinnbike.com. Fantastic, you can own that domain. Now, real quick, because I know we have to get to questions here in a minute. Can you do SEO by yourself? The answer is yes. It requires a little bit of research. It requires a little bit of learning, but everyone here is going to PA Cyber. You guys aren't afraid of that. You know, you're used to going on the computer. You're used to doing research on your own or with a family member. Do it. Reach out to people. You know, I'm positive that there's resources out there that you guys can do it. Now, if you can't do it yourself, that's okay. There are companies that can do it for you. On WordPress, for example, on Drupal, on there's several other ones. There's a couple of free ones out there. There are plugins specifically for search engine optimization. What does that mean? They give you the instructions on how to do it. Install the plugin. It'll walk you through it. Bam, you're done. It's so simple. And remember, all of the search engines, whether they're Google, whether it's Bing, whether it's Ask, whatever search engine you're using, they all have their own special algorithm. So you may have to do some tweaking, but that's okay. The main one is always is Google now, and it'll probably be Google for a very long time, but Bing does have some market share, so you have to keep a look at that. From there, what you'll be able to do is make an informed decision, okay? You've built your website. You've created this great-looking website. You've created content that people love. It's easy to read. It's easy to understand. You've taken your target audience into account. The next thing you got to do is ask questions. Ask your audience, did you like this? Didn't you like it? Do surveys. Find out what people find easy to use about your website and things that they find difficult to use about your website. Don't make a change based on one person's response, because you're not going to make everybody happy. But if you hear a common thread about your website, okay, then you need to understand that that common thread is an issue. Fix it. Find a way to get around it. Even if you think that particular component is really cool or that particular feature is really cool, if your audience doesn't like it, it's not worth it, okay? So I'm going to go ahead here and jump into questions because it's already 3:41 and it looks like we have, oh wow, a bunch of different ones. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. So Nathan asked, do you program your own website? If so, what programs do you use? So I'm going to start with that one. Yes, I program my own websites, but I also have staff that help with that. As far as programs are concerned, I'm going to tell you the truth. If you're going to learn how to build a website, and that's what you want your profession to be, Nathan, learn how to code. So don't use an actual program for it. Now you could pick up Front Page, you can pick up Dreamweaver, or any of those other type of what you see is what you get editors that allow you to do all this stuff, right? And it's all point and click. It's not programming that. If you want to program, you want to open up Notepad, you want to go to a community and learn how to actually program in PHP or .NET or C# or some other type of programming language. My son, as a matter of fact, he's 11 years old now, and he's learning how to script. He's learning how to do specific JavaScript. And what does that mean? He has to learn how to actually write chunks of code. For example, there's, to make a link, something as simple as a link, a text link, is a basic A, and then which means the link, and then you do href, which means it's a hyperreference link, equals, and then you put in whatever it's equal to. All right, in equal sign. After you're going to put a quotation mark, put it what it's equal to, which is basically a link, and you close it. And then what we'll end up doing is you can put text in there, put an image in there, whatever you want. And then you close off with a /A at the end, and that is code to make a link. All of those referenced in the W3C, and I'll send over to Brian and the Mike some information about that, share it with you guys. But there's a library of coding out, which is really important. All right, so the next question, Jenna asked, should your website have theme colors or just have some fun color schemes that you make yourself? Well, let me tell you, you like pink, purples, and you like things that are sparkly, but you're selling something to men, probably not a good idea to pick colors that you like yourself. However, if your target audience is young women that also like those particular colors, then yes, pick colors that you like yourself. But like I said before, just because you like it does not mean something else will like. Ask them. Be afraid to reach out to your client base. For example, you're high school now. So, high school, whatever the case may be. And what winds up happening is you have a bunch of different people out there that friends or your friends, maybe one of them, part of the target audience that you're trying to reach to. Ask them, hey, what do you think if you were going to buy this particular Schwinn bike, would you want to see a website that has these colors, prefer these colors? You're going to get the answer you're looking for. Hopefully it matches your particular passion. It's really going to make a big difference. Hopefully that answers your question. Nathan asked a follow-up question. Would Java work? Yes, absolutely. Java is a very strong program language. As a matter of fact, Java is what they use in NASA for the space shuttle. Very long time. From that, though, don't forget there are other languages. Ruby on Rails. Now, Ruby on Rails is something that is it's an older technology. Java is a very old technology, but Ruby on Rails is very much an older technology also. However, those people are in high demand. If you're looking to find a job as a developer, you want to be in high demand. So I would not learn just one type of programming language. I would learn several. Java, Ruby, .NET, PHP. They are all similar enough to where if you know one syntax language, you can learn another. Not a big deal. It's transferable, not 100%, but at least a good 50%. Most of it boils down to if, then, that statements, okay? So if this, then you do that. If not, then you do this. And it sort of walks through that particular cycle. Hopefully that helped Nathan. Wesley, which web designer would you suggest for people starting out in web design? Which web designer? Well, I'm assuming that you are talking about a class or some type of software. So what I would say is this. If you're trying to learn how to do website design, you actually need to worry about learning how to do design first. So let's take a step back here. There's front-end web development and there's back-end web development. My particular passion is in front end. That means visual look and feel type stuff. I do a lot of stuff in HTML5. I do a lot of stuff with JavaScript and JSON and all these different front end technologies. There's back end technologies. That's where we start talking about the stuff that Nathan wanted to know about, which is Java or Ruby or .NET or C# or any of those other ones. The back end stuff is, for me, a little bit too complex because there's just way too many for me to learn, and I'm already old enough as it is. If you can pick up both, you're going to be in higher demand. But as a web designer, you're going to be doing more front-end stuff. HTML5. I would start with something as simple as Dreamweaver, or Adobe has their cloud-based system, which I think it's like $9.99 a month or something like that for Dreamweaver. But also, they have special student discounts, so reach out to them. Also, if you're on Macs, I do believe that there's some Mac software packages out there that are readily available at student prices, which are extremely affordable. So there are many different ones. I would recommend trying them all out first. You can download free samples and trials. Like Adobe allows you to try it for a month for free. Give it a shot. See what you think. So that may be a really good way for you to go also. All right. Jaden asked, do you have any tips for a web designer? Maybe just to share a couple more important tips. Well, designing your own website. The key word in web design is web, but the more important word actually is design. Learn visual graphics. Learn how to use Photoshop. Learn how to make things in layers. Learn then how to break those things up. So that way visually you can slice it, and then you can export it as images and then import that into an HTML document. All right, and what that's going to do is it's going to show you the basic structure. In Photoshop, you're able to use the rulers like in Word at the top and on the side. And what that does is it allows you to drag these little guides all over the place. So you could quite literally slice pixel upon pixel upon pixel throughout the entire thing. It's a really good way to find out what design elements work and which ones don't. So learn basic design, color theory. Next week, as a matter of fact, I'm going to be teaching you about graphic design. Be there for that class because I can guarantee you we're going to go over all those things. And it's going to help you pick up all those specific type of design questions. You know, should you use this type of font? Should you use that type of font? Stuff like that. Follow-up question, Jake, actually, a new question. Any programs you may recommend for making the website? How about programs for making and hosting your own domain? This is really good. So, GoDaddy, One-on-One, HostGator, all of these different hosting companies. They all also have content management systems that you can then install so you buy your domain through these hosting companies like GoDaddy, and let's say it's 26inchmensswimbike.com, and you buy that particular domain. You pay a hosting, which is a monthly fee for a year. Once you do that monthly fee for a year, you can then install any one of their content management systems through their control panel. In their control panel, you have options like Joomla, you have options like WordPress, you have options like Site 24/7, and all you do is you click a button, and it magically builds your website. And what I mean by building your website is it builds a temporary website, which is just a landing page. And then you can go through and use it's called a what you see is what you get editor. All right, you click on add a page. You then add your content, add your images, you click the publish button, the page is live, like magic. You then go to the menu, which is also in the control panel, and then you select where you want that particular page to show up in your menu. Honestly, extremely simple, extremely cost effective because you could use WordPress.coms for free. All you have to do is go there, sign up, and you can start playing with WordPress and start building your own website in minutes. Doesn't take any commitment, doesn't take any credit card, doesn't take any real content. All you need is a email address. And of course, your parents' permission if you need the parents' permission to do that. So yeah, so that's what it takes to really start making a website. Then, once you go through that process, you can start looking at the code and start seeing what makes an image appear, what makes a link appear, and start pulling apart pieces within the code and then trying to replicate that on your own. Once you do that, you're coding. It's really simple. It doesn't take a lot of effort. A couple things you have to keep in mind. If you are building locally, for example, I could build a quick little web page right here locally without having to host it up in the cloud anywhere. All right, so hosting on the server is not necessary. I can host locally and start playing with stuff. So that way you don't have to worry about a domain or hosting or anything else. If you do that, completely and totally fine. Just remember that any images or anything that's linked, if you're going to upload that to a server later on, you need to make sure you upload everything to the server. That includes any additional components, that includes images, that includes documents, you name it. Whatever you link to, upload it. The other thing is there's things called relative links and direct links, okay? Whenever you use relative links, you have to be extremely specific with the way your site structure is laid out. If you use direct links, you don't need to worry about that. You have to be specific to where the content is. So if you host locally, you have to use relevant links, because otherwise when you upload it to the server, it's not going to be able to find it on your C drive, all right, or on your D drive, or wherever you're building out your website. So use the relative links that way. I see someone else typing a question over here. Let's see here. All right, what kinds of career opportunities are available for web designers? Wow, that's a great question. All right, you can actually start your own business as a web designer by just building web pages on WordPress. It's very simple. If you can learn the ins and outs of how to navigate through WordPress and how to create a custom theme based on someone's idea, you can actually start making a business out of that. You can work for somebody else. One of my clients is actually a digital ad agency, and what they do is they hire me to build out websites for them. It's a great job. I get to work from home a lot. I get to go in and talk to people, meet new people. So that's, again, there's front end and there's back end web developers, and each one is different. If you want to do web designing, that's the front end side. If you want to do architecture related stuff using databases and coding, making these really elaborate applications, you want to learn the back end stuff, which is, again, the strong programming languages: Java, Ruby, C#, ASP, .NET, PHP, any of those other languages work also. So I think that from that perspective, your career opportunities are vast. You can work for a private company, you can work for an agency, you can work for yourself, you can work for an agency and take on freelance as long as they allow that, and as long as you're not competing with them. And in the end, you now have the ability to work as much as you want, as little as you want, from anywhere you want. I can build a website right now and be completely content, or I could do it from the beach in Miami if that's where I was, tomorrow. Which is really the cool part about being a web designer, is it doesn't matter where you're physically located. What matters, most importantly, is that you can do the job, you can do the job well, and you can do the job quickly. That's what it all boils down to. And as long as you can do that, you're golden. If there's any more questions, I'd be happy to take any more. We do have a couple more minutes. If not,
we have a lot of students Mr. Gibb today,
Yes.
asking questions and logged in. You seem very excited about your lesson today.
Oh, great.
And I actually told, because so many were coming in, if they had more questions, to save them and email them to me. I'll pass them on to you.
Absolutely.
Or perhaps if we get enough questions coming in, you may be able to open the room a few minutes early before your next lesson.
Absolutely. I'll
Give
be
you a
here.
chance to address them.
That sounds great. Just let me know. I'll be here next week. So in the end, what winds up happening is if there are questions, if there's a lot, we'll do it beforehand or throughout the week, either way.
Okay, great. Good stuff. But overall, thank you very much. You did a great job today.
Thank you.
The students loved the lesson. I'm getting a lot of great feedback.
Fantastic.
We're looking forward to having you again next week.
Thank you, everyone. Take care now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.